It's been nearly 5 whole years since the pioneering PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds first appeared on Steam in March of 2017 and introduced us to the idea of pitting 100 players against each other in a struggle for dear life until only the best, or last, among them survives. Since then, the original Battle Royale has been locked in a battle for relevance against the many games that it inspired, and only now has it dropped its entry fee and joined the ranks of free-to-play competition. PUBG hasn't lost its touch, but its novelty has worn off, and in some ways, it's left wanting in comparison to newer and more innovative Battle Royale games. In its favor, survival after parachuting into PUBG's relatively realistic open world requires you to be much stealthier and more deliberately tactical than you would in, say, the run-and-gun style of Fortnite. For example, you might wait for a passing aircraft to drown out your footsteps so you can enter a household undetected, or you might use a smoke screen to distract a squad of enemy players that are pinning you down from a nearby ridge. Firefights are tense, even though the wide selection of guns tend to be clunky to shoot, even after you've modded them with scopes and extended magazines. This is because weapons in PUBG lack the gun feel that makes modern shooters like Call of Duty or Apex Legends so enjoyable to play. They're tolerable to handle in third-person mode, but frustratingly inaccurate unless you switch to first-person mode or aim down the sights. But since movement is clearly designed around third-person play, not to mention you get the ability to peek around corners without poking your head out, first-person mode feels slow by comparison, and the weapons suffer for it. PUBG's emphasis on realistic bullet physics is just fine, and it makes sense that hit markers are absent by default, because PUBG wants to give you as little information as possible to make its fights more intense, but it's not nearly as slick as, say, Call of Duty Warzone. Each of the 7 diverse maps, including the Eastern European-inspired Erangel and the Golden Deserts of Miramar, are vast enough to get lost in, and you'll never see everything in one go before most of the playable area is swallowed by the shrinking survival zone that forces everyone together at the end of a match. They all sprawl across a variety of outposts, villages, and terrain features, such as rivers and mountains that can be used to your advantage if you approach it like a tactical toy box. It's all gorgeous to look at, but it also serves to give you choices in how you survive the encroaching storm and evade or ambush anybody who may be waiting to pick you off. It can become tedious to move across them if you and your team of up to 4 find yourselves without a vehicle though, and when you do find one, they're not much fun to drive because of their poor controls and clunky physics. And because these matches last considerably longer than the typical Apex Legends or Fortnite round, there can be quite a bit of dead air. But of course, the hunt for ammunition, body armor, and medical supplies to keep you in the fight is constant. That expansive map size means there's always an opportunity cost to action or inaction in PUBG. Every decision is meaningful, but usually not enough to spell life or death on its own. Will you cut across the open field to reach a nearby weapons cache and risk a sniper attack? Or will you sneak between buildings and hope you find decent loot along the way? Do you recklessly drive across the map and risk unwanted attention? Or do you creep around the edges of the storm and wait for the other players to pick each other off before making your move? Lots of approaches are viable, and achieving that chicken dinner winner screen is still a thrill. And if you're curious about whether it runs well, don't worry, it does. But it's a lot better if you're playing on a decent PC. By comparison, PUBG is a rough experience on PlayStation 5. It's a struggle to distinguish other players at long ranges, rendering the vastness of PUBG's maps feeling empty. There is a performance mode, which aims for a smooth 60 FPS at 1080p, but the lack of 4K fidelity, limited draw distance, and imprecise controls make it difficult to play PUBG the way it was designed. You're also locked into playing with other PlayStation and Xbox players, which puts PUBG firmly behind its Battle Royale contemporaries in crossplay with PC and other platforms. Ultimately, PUBG doesn't have much meat on its bones if you get bored of skirmishing for survival in both solo and team modes. There's very little in the way of custom maps, and the only other official arcade mode is a lackluster team deathmatch that you can comfortably ignore. That single mode focus is similar to Apex Legends, but neither can hold a candle to the versatility of Fortnite. It's great then that you can always dip into the dedicated training mode and play with PUBG's entire collection of weapons and toys for as long as you want, even testing them against a firing range, a race car track, and a cool jump school area that lets you parachute in as many times as you'd like. In fact, the new player experience does a fine job of getting you up to speed quickly with a few mandatory training matches against easy target bots. As far as this free-to-play revamp goes, PUBG now offers the mostly standard assortment of cosmetic options and a battle pass. However, it's unique among its peers in that it charges a $13 fee to access the ranked mode, which is kind of a bummer if you have any intention of competing, but it does make sense as a potential deterrent for cheaters who would otherwise just create new accounts daily. If you want to get serious about PUBG, it's a small price to pay to keep those jerks at bay. It's far from being too little too late for this venerable battle royale to reduce its price tag to zero. PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds may be a known quantity these days, but its slower-paced survival of the fittest struggle still creates memorable shootouts and intense moments in nearly every match. However, console players might find its efforts to render its massive 8x8 kilometer maps in proper detail technically disappointing, and no matter where you play, its vehicles are no joyride. Luckily, PUBG has plenty of life left in it, if you can look past the clunky weapons and vehicles for the much more hectic firefights and interesting tactics-focused survival that takes place in spite of it all. For more Battle Royale action, have a look at the competition in our updated review of Apex Legends and the newer melee-focused Naraka Blade Point. And for everything else, stick with IGN.